Welcome to the Check from Joseki Tech. I'm Adam Steadley, and I'm here to talk about one of the events I attended at the SBC Summit of the Americas. So this was a gaming conference. I'm sure many of you have attended. If not, it's really conference is very focused on gambling and casino operators, both brick and mortar and online. So the panel that I attended that we're going to talk about today was the iGaming Leaders Panel, Omnichannel Strategy for Enhanced Customer Experience. So that's kind of a mouthful. What they're really talking about is for gaming customers, gamblers is what we're talking about in this context. How do they behave when they go online, and how do they behave when they go into the casino or the sports book? And what do we need to do to make sure that we have a strategy that works across both? So if you're not in gaming, this is still an interesting concept. In retail, we deal with this a lot because we have clients that have an online platform for e-commerce, and then they still have a traditional brick and mortar store. So they still have the same kind of issues that they're talking about. So the panel attendees was a pretty sharp bunch of folks. We had the CEO of Betfred US, Chris Spajic. We had the CIO from Delaware North, Lee Terfloth. We had Oliver Bartlett from BetMGM was supposed to attend, but he was not able to. So the Chief Revenue Officer from BetMGM, Matt Prevost, attended. We had Andy Mace, the head of casino personalization for Sportradar. We had Shai Frank, the SVP of product and the GM of Americas from Optimove. And we had Marty Collins, the Chief Business Development Officer at Soft2Bet, was our moderator. So it was big hitters all in all there at the group giving their points. So the first thing the panel was discussing was what was their view of what a successful omni-channel program really looked like. And there was really resounding agreement across the panel. You want to have a personalized experience. You want it to be seamless and consistent. And that's going to be seamless and consistent across the branding, the promos, the games you're talking about, the content. You want to have a single wallet and account, a single loyalty program. You want to meet your customer where they are. All of this really sounds very straightforward and very, I'm going to say basic, but it really is pretty basic to say these items as things we want to do. They're certainly much harder to accomplish. So there we dove into a lot about what the challenges were. So let's dig in a little more about what we're talking about for these points. And there were certainly examples that were given by the field. One of the good ones was BetMGM has a product now called a dual play, where the online players have some video representation into the real casino, and it's somehow the two groups are working together. So that's something that clearly, when you're on property, you want to have branding and signage that discusses it. You want to have the same in the email marketing that you're doing across both platforms so your customers can get used to the fact that these two things exist and understand them. So that's pretty clear. Promotions, when you have promotions, they need to be similar in both places so that you're not offering wildly different things. So one customer group is going to feel slighted because they're offered different things in different situations. Another big point that is also pretty hard to accomplish is going to be around the loyalty program. When a person comes into the casino, if they are a VIP, they want to be treated like a VIP. They want to know what kind of amenities and sort of special freebies they're going to get when they get there. So you want to be able to have that same experience carry over for the online people when they first show up on property, that they're not treated like a total newbie, that you can recognize their customer status and make sure they feel the love, and vice versa. When one of your big spenders in the casino shows up online, they should get a similar high touch quality experience. So that's, again, like a lot of these things, is very easy to say, but very hard to do. So I do think when we put the lens of the customer on, a lot of this stuff makes pretty clear and open sense. We want to have a seamless experience from one platform to the other and feel like we're dealing with one company and not two companies. So that really segues us to what the challenges are that were discussed here. And the challenges are really pretty broad. And I think the biggest one is organizational. A lot of times these physically are two different companies. There's certainly two different teams. So your casino hosts are a completely different group than the folks that are working with your online customers. So there's not a direct contact where they're talking to each other about these customers or really even coordinating in any sense. The conversation in the room then led to KPIs, which is clearly going to be a big point. Everyone's being compensated based on how well their customers are doing. And if an online customer goes into the casino for that online team, it may hurt their bottom line. It may hurt their bonus. So we have to look at KPIs that are broad and understand what's best for the customer as well as what's best for the organization. If we keep too much of a focus on just what's good for the organization, we're going to lose them. We're going to have infighting between the two teams and things aren't going to go well. And the truth is that's the identical thing that we see in e-commerce versus retail in these two areas. Is it separate bottom lines? Those groups sometimes roll all the way up to separate CEOs. So while we do try to work together, there is definitely the issue of cannibalizing from the other side of the house and how that works. It's something to watch out for. The other biggest challenge that was talked about was around technology. And this, I think, is really why Shai Frank from Optimove was there. And it's one of the really strong offerings that they have with Optimove is you've got to get all your data in one place at one time to then be able to do all the things you need to make a reasonable omni-channel experience, right? You have to understand what their behavior is online, what their behavior is in the casino. Well, those are coming from completely different systems, and they may not share data. You may not easily within your organization be able to get the data in the same place. So what Shai was pushing, which is one of Optimove's sort of central tenets, is around collecting data both in batch and sort of overnight jobs, as well as in real time and from various data feeds. So if you have a well set up Optimove instance, you can be getting that data from all those different points and really using Optimove as your data warehouse to collect all that data together in one place at one time. So I can then analyze my customers correctly to get them in proper life cycle stages, get my segmentation correct, so I can then build out my targeting, so I can then deliver the messages and deliver the experiences to the customers that they really need that's most relevant to them. That level of personalization is impossible without having all the data in one place. So there was pretty well around the group agreement that this was something that was both required and is difficult. So that kind of brought us to the end of the conversation. I do think it was interesting. There's a lot to think about on those points. I would say from Joseki Tech side, some of the things that really resonated with me were around that collecting of the data and collecting of the experience. And some of that is probably because of my background. Getting the data together is really the core of what my background is and what a lot of my team works on. And then once we have the data, we can build the experiences, we can build the messages. I also have seen from my experience, simply being a little bit of an outsider as the consultant, it makes it very easy to take that customer first view to say, okay, I understand that this side of the house and this side of the house may not agree upon, how we should get the credit, but what's right to the customer? What's going to be a good, seamless experience to the customer who doesn't know or doesn't care that it's two bottom lines at the end of the day? They just know what the big logo is on the door when they show up at the website. In conclusion, I think it was a real good talk. It was interesting to me as much as anything because I saw the same things we're seeing in retail over and over, that we need to make sure the customer gets that same experience regardless of where they enter the system. So if they come into a retail store, if they come into a retail gaming site, they should be presented and recognized with their loyalty status the same way when they show up online. When we have sales and offers and promotions, they need to be the same across both areas. So we see in retail, there's a constant problem with pricing. Sometimes it's more expensive in store than it is online or vice versa. And your customers are going to find that, and there's some difference that they're going to accept because, customers realize that they're different channels and things are fundamentally different in some ways, but those differences can't be so astounding that the customer feels like they're getting shortchanged somewhere or that they're getting taken advantage of in one situation versus the other. So we really need to work on making sure that we're getting a consistent experience there. Again, we're going to have some mechanical challenges with technology because a lot of times we have very different systems and we need to find one way to pull all that data together. Here, Shai, speaking from Optimove, speaks really from a position of strength, because Optimove is really good at that. They're good at taking data from all the various endpoints and then acting as that data warehouse, that central CDP to house all the data so you can make the correct segmentations, the correct personalizations. And those, of course, let you get a better customer experience in the end. But again, the biggest challenge is going to be organizationally. We've got to understand that we have different teams that are compensated differently based on different actions. And there's going to be a lot of concern about, one side of the house stealing business from the other side. I do think it's important for us to all realize that we need to step up. We need to think about what's best for the customer, for their experience. And I think if we can all focus on what's best for the customer, at the end of the day, it's also going to be what's best for our bottom lines. So with that, thanks for joining us today on the Check with Joseki Tech, and we'll catch you next time.